Jake Morrison floated in the darkness of space, waiting to die. His escape pod spun slowly, showing him stars through the small window. The stars looked cold and far away. Jake pressed his face against the glass and tried not to think about home. 3 days ago, he had been Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Horizon, Earth's most advanced spaceship. Now he was just a man in a broken pod with failing air. The pod's computer kept beeping warnings at him. Oxygen low, power failing, life support critical. Jake remembered the moment everything went wrong. The Horizon had been exploring a new star system when strange energy waves appeared from nowhere. The waves looked like purple lightning that moved through space like water. They hit the ship before anyone could react. The energy tore through the hull like paper. Jake watched his crew of 200 people die in seconds. The ship broke apart around them. Jake barely made it to an escape pod before the Horizon exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the dark space around them. That had been 6 days ago. Jake's pod had enough supplies for 5 days. He had been living on borrowed time since yesterday. Jake closed his eyes and thought about Earth. He wondered if anyone back home knew what happened. The communication array had been destroyed in the first seconds of the attack. No distress signal had been sent. Earth would never know that Jake Morrison and the crew of the Horizon had died trying to explore the stars. The pod shuddered. Jake opened his eyes and looked at the control panel. Something was happening outside. The sensors showed a large object approaching. Jake looked through the window and saw lights moving toward him. At first, he thought it might be another Earth ship. Maybe someone had come looking for the Horizon. But as the lights got closer, Jake realized this was not a human ship. The vessel was huge and shaped like a flower made of metal. Soft blue light came from panels all over its surface. Jake had never seen anything like it. The ship moved without making any sound that he could hear. It came close to his pod and stopped. Jake waited. He did not know what else to do. A beam of light shot out from the alien ship and wrapped around Jake's pod. The pod stopped spinning and began moving toward the larger vessel. Jake felt his heart beating fast. He was about to meet aliens, real aliens, from another world. The pod was pulled into a bay inside the alien ship. Jake could see through the window that the bay was filled with soft, warm light. When the pod settled on the floor, Jake heard a hissing sound. Air was being pumped into the bay. A door opened in the side of the bay. 3 beings walked through. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of silver. Their faces were kind, with large eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. They wore robes that seemed to float around their bodies. One of them approached Jake's pod. It placed a hand on the surface and spoke. Jake was surprised to hear words he could understand. "We are the keepers," the being said. Its voice sounded like music. "You are safe now. We have come to help you." Jake tried to speak, but his throat was dry. The being seemed to understand his problem. It made a gesture, and Jake's pod opened with a soft click. Fresh air flowed in. Jake took a deep breath and felt better immediately. "Thank you," Jake said. His voice came out as a whisper. The tall being helped Jake out of the pod. Jake's legs were weak from being cramped in the small space for so long. The being supported him as they walked toward the door. "I am Elder Zephys," the being said. "We saw your ship's destruction. We are sorry for your loss." Jake stopped walking. "You saw what happened to the horizon?" "Yes," Elder Zephys said sadly. "The energy storms are spreading across this part of space. Many ships have been lost. Many worlds have been destroyed." "Worlds?" Jake asked. "You mean planets?" "Yes. The storms do not only destroy ships, they destroy everything they touch. Entire civilizations have been lost." Jake felt sick. "What about Earth, my home planet?" Elder Zephys was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but sad. "We detected a massive energy storm in your home system 3 days after your ship was destroyed. We tried to send a warning, but we were too far away." Jake's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the floor of the alien ship. Earth was gone. Everyone he had ever known was dead. His family, his friends, his entire species. All gone. "I am the last human alive," Jake said to himself. "Perhaps not the last," Elder Zephys said kindly. "There are other humans scattered among the stars. We have saved some. Not many, but some." Jake looked up at the alien. "You saved other humans?" "We are keepers," Elder Zephys explained. "We travel the galaxy looking for life to preserve. When we find beings in danger, we try to save them. It is our purpose, our reason for existing." "Why?" Jake asked. "Why do you help others?" Elder Zephys helped Jake stand up. "Because life is precious. Every species, every individual has something unique to offer the universe. When a species dies, that uniqueness is lost forever. We cannot allow that to happen if we can prevent it." They walked through long hallways filled with the same soft light. Jake saw other beings moving through the ship. Some looked like Elder Zephys. Others were completely different. There were beings made of crystal, beings that looked like walking, trees, and beings that seemed to be made of pure light. "All of these people were saved by the Keepers?" Jake asked. "Yes. Over many thousands of years, we have rescued survivors from dying worlds. They live with us now on our home planet. They are safe there." Jake felt overwhelmed. "What happens to me now?" "You will come to Sanctum Prime, our home world. You will be given a place to live and work to do if you want it. You will be safe. You will never be alone." They entered a room that looked like a medical bay. Soft beds were arranged around machines that hummed quietly. Elder Zephys gestured for Jake to lie down on one of the beds. "You need rest and medical attention," Elder Zephys said. "The journey to Sanctum Prime will take several days. When you wake up, you will be stronger." Jake lay down on the bed. The surface was soft and warm. He felt more comfortable than he had in days. "Elder Zephys," Jake said as his eyes began to close. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for surviving, Jake Morrison. The universe is better with you in it." Jake fell asleep to the gentle humming of keeper machines. For the first time in a week, he felt safe. The keepers had saved him from certain death. Now he had a chance to start over in a galaxy full of wonders he had never imagined. He did not know it yet, but Jake Morrison would one day return the favor the keepers had given him. He would help save not just the keepers, but the entire galaxy. But that story would begin when he reached Sanctum Prime and discovered what it truly meant to be a keeper of life. 5 years had passed since Jake Morrison arrived on Sanctum Prime. The Keeper homeworld was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Cities of crystal and metal grew from the ground like living trees. Rivers of pure energy flowed between buildings that seemed to float in the air. The sky was filled with 3 suns that painted everything in shades of gold and silver. Jake had his own home now, a small dwelling built into the side of a crystal mountain. From his window, he could see the vast libraries where the keepers stored the knowledge of 1,000 dead civilizations. Every morning, he walked through gardens where plants from across the galaxy grew together in impossible harmony. The keepers had been kind to him. They gave him work in their preservation centers where the history and culture of extinct species was carefully maintained. Jake learned to operate their quantum storage devices and helped organize the memories of worlds that no longer existed. But Jake was not the only human on Sanctum Prime. Lisa Carter had arrived 2 years after Jake. She had been a scientist on a research station that studied alien plant life. The same energy storms that killed Earth had destroyed her station, but the keepers found her floating in space just like they had found Jake. Lisa was different from Jake. Where he had been a military man who followed orders and led others, she was a scientist who asked questions and looked for answers. She had long brown hair and green eyes that seemed to see everything. When she smiled, which was often, it made the whole room feel brighter. At first, Jake and Lisa were just 2 humans sharing their grief for their lost world. They would sit together in the evenings and tell each other stories about Earth. Lisa would describe the forests she had studied in South America. Jake would talk about the mountains near his childhood home in Colorado. But as time passed, their friendship grew into something deeper. They found comfort in each other's company. They began to build a new life together on this strange, beautiful world. Jake discovered he had a gift for understanding keeper technology. The devices that other species found impossible to learn came naturally to him. Elder Zephys said it was because humans thought differently than other species. Where most beings tried to understand how something worked before using it, humans just figured out what they needed to do and made it happen. Your species has an unusual approach to problem solving, Elder Zephys told Jake one day, as they worked in the main preservation chamber. You do not get stuck thinking about why something cannot be done. You simply find a way to do it. Jake was working on a storage unit that had been broken for 300 years. It contained the entire musical heritage of a species called the Melodians. The keepers had tried to fix it many times, but the quantum matrix was too complex for them to understand. Jake did not try to understand the matrix. Instead, he looked at what the device was supposed to do and worked backward from there. He bypassed the broken parts and created new pathways for the energy to flow. Within an hour, the device was humming with life again. The lost songs of the melodians filled the chamber with hauntingly beautiful music. "How did you do that?" Elder Zephys asked, amazed. "I just asked myself what the melodians would have wanted," Jake said. "They wanted their music to survive, so I found a way to make that happen." Lisa was making her own discoveries. Her work with alien plants had taught her to see patterns that others missed. She noticed that the different species living on Sanctum Prime were not just surviving together, they were actually helping each other grow stronger. The crystal beings called the Janari grew better when they were near the plant-like Verdani. The energy creatures known as Lumina became brighter when they interacted with the stone-like Terranoids. Each species had something that helped the others, but none of them had realized it before Lisa pointed it out. "It is remarkable, Elder," Zephys said when Lisa showed him her research. "We have been preserving these species for thousands of years, but we never saw these connections." "That is because you think about preservation as keeping things safe and separate," Lisa explained. "But life does not want to be separate. Life wants to connect and grow and change." Elder Zephys looked troubled. "But change means risk. If species change too much, they might lose what makes them special. We might fail to preserve their true nature." Jake and Lisa exchanged a look. They had been having conversations like this with the keepers for months. The ancient beings were wise and kind, but they were also afraid. They had seen so much death and destruction that they focused only on keeping things safe. "Elder Zephys," Jake said gently, "what if preservation is not about keeping things exactly the same? What if it is about helping them survive and grow?" That evening, Jake and Lisa sat in their favorite spot overlooking the energy rivers of Sanctum Prime. The three suns were setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "I have been thinking about what you said to Elder Zephys," Lisa said, "about preservation being about growth instead of just safety." "What about it?" Jake asked. "The keepers have saved so many species, but they are all just living here on Sanctum Prime. They are not building new worlds or having children or creating new things. They are just existing." Jake nodded. He had noticed the same thing. The keepers were focused so much on preserving life that they had forgotten about living it. "And there is something else," Lisa continued. "The keepers are dying out. They spend all their energy saving others, but they are not taking care of themselves. Elder Zephys told me there are only a few thousand keepers left in the entire galaxy. There used to be millions." Jake felt a chill. "They are going extinct while trying to save everyone else." "Yes. And if they die, who will continue their work? Who will save the species that need saving?" That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about the keepers and their mission. They had saved him when he had nowhere else to go. They had given him a new life and a purpose. Now it seemed like they needed saving themselves. The next morning, Jake and Lisa went to see Elder Zephys. They found him in the communication center, listening to distress signals from across the galaxy. His face looked tired and sad. "More worlds are dying," Elder Zephys said without looking up. "The energy storms are getting stronger. We cannot save them all." "Elder Zephys," Jake said, "Lisa and I have been talking. We think there might be a better way to approach this problem. The ancient keeper looked at them with interest. What do you mean? Lisa stepped forward. Instead of just saving individuals, what if we saved entire communities? What if we helped species work together to protect themselves? And what if we trained others to do what you do? Jake added. The keepers cannot be everywhere at once, but if you taught other species how to save lives and preserve cultures, your mission could continue even if something happened to you. Elder Zephys was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. You are suggesting that we change the way we have operated for thousands of years. We are suggesting that you grow, Lisa said, the same way you help other species grow. Elder Zephys looked at the displays showing dying worlds across the galaxy. Then he looked at Jake and Lisa, two humans who had lost everything but still wanted to help others. Tell me more about these ideas, he said. Jake felt a spark of hope. Maybe they could find a way to save not just the keepers, but all the species threatened by the energy storms. Maybe the humans could give back to the galaxy that had saved them. But Jake did not know that the energy storms were not natural disasters. He did not know that somewhere in the dark space between galaxies, ancient enemies were coming closer every day. He did not know that soon the keepers and all the species they had saved would face a threat greater than anything they had ever imagined. All Jake knew was that he and Lisa had found a new purpose. They would help the keepers learn to help others help themselves. It was a small beginning, but Jake had learned that sometimes small beginnings led to great things. The galaxy had saved 2 humans. Now those humans would begin the work of saving the galaxy in return. The alarm bells on Sanctum Prime had never sounded so loud or so long. Jake Morrison ran through the crystal corridors toward the communications center, his heart pounding with fear. Lisa was already there when he arrived, standing next to Elder Zephys and staring at the massive display screens in horror. The screens showed destruction on a scale that Jake had never imagined. Entire star systems were going dark. Planets that had been home to billions of living beings were now nothing but cold rocks floating in space. The energy storms that had destroyed Earth were hitting dozens of worlds at the same time. How many? Jake asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. 47 worlds in the last 3 days, Elder Zephys said. His usually calm voice shook with emotion. The storms are coordinated now. They are attacking multiple targets at once. Lisa pointed to one of the screens. Look at this pattern. The storms are not random anymore. They are following specific routes through space, hitting the most populated worlds first. Jake studied the display. His military training helped him see what Lisa meant. The attacks were organized like a military campaign. Someone or something was controlling the storms, using them as weapons to destroy entire civilizations. This is not a natural disaster, Jake said. This is an invasion. Elder Zephys nodded sadly. We have suspected this for some time, but now we have proof. He touched a control, and the main screen changed to show a recording from a keeper ship near the Corlin Empire. The recording showed massive black ships emerging from the storms. The ships were shaped like giant insects, with long spines and glowing red eyes. They moved through space like sharks through water, fast and deadly. When they approached a planet, energy beams shot out from their hulls. The beams did not just destroy buildings or cities. They seemed to drain the life from everything they touched. We call them the Devourers, Elder Zephys explained. They consume entire worlds, taking not just the matter and energy, but something deeper. They feed on life itself. Jake watched in sick fascination as one of the black ships approached a blue-green world covered in cities. The planet looked peaceful and beautiful, like Earth had been. Within minutes, the Devourer ship had turned it into a gray, lifeless rock. "How long has this been going on?" Lisa asked. "The attack started small, maybe 50 years ago," Elder Zephys said. "Single ships hitting remote outposts. We thought they were pirates or raiders, but they have been growing stronger, building their forces. Now they have enough ships to attack entire star systems." Another alarm sounded. A keeper technician called out from across the room. "Elder Zephys, we are receiving a distress call from the Corlan home fleet. They are under attack." The screen switched to show the pride of the Corlan Empire, hundreds of massive warships that had never been defeated in battle. The Corlan were a warrior species, proud and strong. Their ships carried weapons that could crack moons in half. But the Corlan fleet was being destroyed. The Devourer ships moved too fast for the Corlan weapons to track. When the Corlan fired their massive cannons, the energy beams just passed through the enemy ships as if they were not there. The Devourers struck back with weapons that seemed to eat the Corlan ships from the inside out. Jake watched as ship after ship went dark. Each one had carried thousands of Corlan warriors who had never retreated from any battle. Now they were dying without being able to fight back. "We have to help them," Jake said. Elder Zephys looked at him sadly. "What can we do? Our ships are built for rescue and preservation, not war. We have no weapons that could hurt the Devourers." "Then we find another way," Lisa said. "We are scientists and explorers. We solve problems. This is just a bigger problem than we have faced before." Over the next few hours, reports came in from across the galaxy. The Synth Collective, a group of artificial beings with the most advanced technology in known space, was under attack. Their quantum computers and energy shields were useless against Devourer weapons. The Raktar Federation, master builders who had created fortress worlds that were supposed to be unbreakable, watched their strongest defenses crumble like paper. Every major power in the galaxy was losing. Jake spent the day studying everything the Keepers knew about the Devourers. There was not much information, but what they had was terrifying. The Devourers had technology that seemed to break the basic rules of physics. They could move through solid matter, bend energy to their will, and consume life force itself. But Jake noticed something interesting in the reports. Every time a Keeper ship had encountered Devourers, the Keeper ship had escaped. The Devourers seemed to ignore the Keepers, as if they could not see them properly. "Lisa," Jake called, "come look at this." Lisa joined him at the research terminal. Jake showed her the encounter reports. "See the pattern?" Jake asked. The Devourers attack military ships and colony ships and research vessels. But they ignore Keeper ships. Why? Lisa studied the data. Maybe because keeper ships do not have weapons, the devourers might see them as harmless? Or maybe there is something about keeper technology that makes them hard to detect, Jake suggested. The keepers have always been focused on preservation. Maybe their ships are designed to be invisible to things that hunt life. Elder Zephys overheard their conversation and joined them. You may be correct. Our ships are designed to slip through space without disturbing the natural order. We avoid detection so we can reach those who need rescue. Jake felt excitement building in his chest. What if we could extend that protection to other ships? What if we could hide entire fleets from the devourers? The technology is very complex, Elder Zephys said. It took us thousands of years to develop. Other species would need decades to learn how to use it. But humans learn fast, Lisa said. Jake figured out your preservation devices in months, not years. Maybe we can find a way to adapt the technology quickly. Jake was already thinking about the possibilities, and if we can hide ships, maybe we can hide planets too. We could protect entire worlds from the devourers. Elder Zephys looked hopeful for the first time in days. It would require working with all the galactic powers, the Corlin, the Synth, the Raktar. They would have to trust us with their most advanced technology. They will, Jake said confidently. When people are dying, they put aside their differences and work together. That is what humans do. And I think that is what everyone else will do too, when they understand what we are facing. That night, Jake and Lisa worked together in the research lab studying keeper technology and trying to understand how it worked. The quantum equations were incredibly complex, but Jake found that if he stopped trying to understand every detail and just focused on what the technology was supposed to do, he could make progress. Lisa approached the problem differently. She looked at how keeper technology interacted with living beings, and she made a startling discovery. Jake, look at this, she said, pointing to a biological scan of herself. When I am near keeper devices, my brain patterns change. The quantum field affects human consciousness in a specific way. Jake looked at the data. What does that mean? I think it means that humans are naturally compatible with keeper technology. Maybe that is why you can learn to use their devices so quickly. Maybe we have some kind of natural resistance to detection. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If Lisa was right, then humans might be uniquely suited to fighting the devourers. They might be the key to saving the galaxy. But first, they had to convince the galactic powers to work together. The proud Corlin, the logical Synth, and the suspicious Raktar had been enemies for centuries. Getting them to cooperate would be almost as hard as fighting the devourers. Jake looked out the window at the three suns of Sanctum Prime. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were dying. The devourers were consuming world after world, getting stronger with each victory. But Jake was not afraid. He had been saved by aliens who barely knew him. Now, he would find a way to save them back. Humanity would not stand by and watch the galaxy die. The war for the survival of all life was about to begin. and 2 humans from a dead world would lead the fight. 3 months after the first coordinated Devourer attacks, Jake Morrison stood in the war room of Sanctum Prime, surrounded by holographic displays showing the galaxy's desperate situation. Half the known worlds had gone dark. The surviving civilizations were scattered and afraid, hiding in remote systems and praying the Devourers would not find them. But Jake was not focused on defeat. He was focused on the small victories they had begun to achieve. "Show them the Altair system results," Jake said to the keeper technician operating the display. The hologram changed to show a star system where a synth collective research station had been attacked by 3 Devourer ships. But this time, the story had ended differently. The research station was still there, protected by a shimmering barrier of energy. Elder Zephys leaned forward in amazement. The human's quantum resonance field worked. Jake nodded with satisfaction. It had taken weeks of testing, but he and Lisa had finally found a way to adapt keeper technology for other species. The key was human DNA itself. Lisa had discovered that humans had unique quantum patterns in their genetic code, patterns that made them naturally resistant to Devourer scanning technology. She had figured out how to copy those patterns and project them around other ships and stations. The Devourers could not see the research station, Jake explained. Their ships passed right by it as if it was not there. But the real breakthrough had come when Alex Turner arrived on Sanctum Prime. Alex had been a commander on one of Earth's deep space mining operations. His ship had been exploring an asteroid field when the energy storms hit Earth. The Keepers found him 3 weeks ago, drifting in space with his small crew of 12 humans. Unlike Jake and Lisa, Alex was a pure military mind. He looked at problems and saw tactical solutions. When Jake explained the situation with the Devourers, Alex immediately understood what they needed to do. "You are thinking about this like a defensive war," Alex had said. "But defense alone never wins. We need to go on the attack." "But how do we attack something we cannot hurt?" Jake had asked. Alex smiled grimly. "We hurt them by saving what they want to destroy. We turn every rescue into a defeat for them." Now Alex was in the room with them, pointing to areas on the galactic map where small keeper fleets were operating. "We have successfully evacuated 17 worlds in the last month," he reported. "The Devourers arrived to find empty planets. No life to consume." Elder Zephys looked pleased but worried. "These victories are wonderful, but they are small. The Devourers have thousands of ships. We cannot save everyone." "Not by ourselves," Jake agreed. "But we do not have to do this alone." Jake touched the display controls and the image changed to show a massive space station hidden in an asteroid field. The station was built from a mixture of technologies: Keeper quantum crystals, Corlin battle armor, synth energy conduits, and Raktar structural engineering. "Welcome to Haven Station," Jake said, "the first truly cooperative military base in galactic history." The station had been Jake's idea, but it had taken all of them working together to make it real. When Jake first proposed building a joint base where all the galaxy's species could work together, everyone thought he was crazy. The Corlan were proud warriors who had never asked for help from anyone. The Synth Collective operated on pure logic and saw cooperation with inferior biological beings as inefficient. The Raktar Federation trusted no one outside their own species, but desperation had made them willing to listen. Jake had spent weeks traveling between the surviving fleets, carrying messages and proposals. He spoke to Corlin war chiefs about honor and duty. He showed synth leaders logical proofs that cooperation would increase their survival chances. He convinced Raktar commanders that working together was the strongest defense. Slowly, reluctantly, the galactic powers had agreed to try. The first joint operation launches tomorrow, Lisa announced, joining the conversation. She had been working in the Biological Research Center, but her discoveries were crucial to their military plans. Tell them about the communication network, Jake suggested. Lisa activated another display. I have been studying how different species think and communicate. Each species has unique brain patterns and sensory abilities. The Corlan think in terms of honor and personal combat. The synth process information in pure mathematical concepts. The Raktar focus on territorial defense and group survival. How does that help us fight the Devourers? Elder Zephys asked. Because I have found a way for all of them to share information instantly, Lisa explained. Using Keeper quantum technology and human neural patterns as a bridge, I can create a communication network that lets different species understand each other perfectly. She showed them a recording of a test they had conducted the previous week. A Corlin warrior, a synth intelligence, and a Raktar commander had been linked through Lisa's network. Despite their completely different ways of thinking, they had been able to coordinate a complex battle simulation perfectly. Imagine a Corlin ship pilot who can think like a synth computer while maintaining Raktar awareness of environmental threats, Lisa said. That pilot could outmaneuver any Devourer ship, Alex pointed to the tactical displays. And imagine a fleet where every ship knows exactly what every other ship is doing, where decisions are made at the speed of thought instead of the speed of radio signals. Elder Zephys looked amazed. You have created something that has never existed before. True unity between species. Not just unity, Jake corrected. Cooperation that makes everyone stronger. The Corlan become better warriors when they can think like synth. The synth become more efficient when they understand Raktar survival instincts. Everyone benefits. But their greatest discovery had come from studying the Devourers themselves. Nathan Cross had been the final human rescued by the Keepers. He had been a physicist working on experimental space-time research when Earth was destroyed. His rescue ship found him inside a research station that had been folded into a pocket dimension, protecting him from the energy storms. Nathan was brilliant, but he thought about physics in ways that made even the synth confused. When he heard about the Devourers, he immediately started working on theories about how their technology functioned. The Devourers are not just destroying worlds, Nathan had explained to them. They are consuming the quantum information that makes life possible. Every living being exists as both matter and information. The Devourers feed on the information part. What does that mean for fighting them? Jake had asked. It means we cannot beat them with conventional weapons, Nathan said, but we might be able to beat them with life itself. Nathan's research had led to Lisa's most important discovery. Life was not just resistant to devourer technology, it was actively harmful to them. The more diverse and connected life became, the harder it was for the devourers to consume it. That is why they ignore keeper ships, Lisa had realized. Keeper vessels carry genetic samples and cultural information from hundreds of species. All that life information creates interference that makes the ships invisible to devourer senses. This discovery had changed everything. Instead of just hiding from the devourers, they could actively fight them by creating concentrations of diverse life. The first test had been incredibly dangerous. A single keeper ship, protected by quantum barriers and carrying genetic samples from 50 different species, had deliberately approached a devourer vessel. The devourer ship had reacted like a living thing touching poison. It had twisted away from the keeper ship and fled into deep space. We can hurt them, Jake had realized. Not with weapons, but with the thing they are trying to destroy. Now, as Jake looked at the displays showing their growing network of hidden bases and cooperative fleets, he felt something he had not felt since Earth died. He felt hope. The galaxy had saved a handful of humans from extinction. Now those humans were teaching the galaxy how to save itself. Tomorrow, the first truly united Galactic fleet would launch its first mission. Ships from 4 different species working together with technology that combined the best of all their civilizations would attempt something no one had ever tried before. They would hunt the hunters. They would take the fight to the devourers. Jake Morrison, the last captain of Earth's dead navy, would lead them into battle. The massive conference hall on Haven Station buzzed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in galactic history. Jake Morrison stood at the center of the circular room, looking at beings he would have thought were impossible just 6 years ago. Commander Thaxal of the Corlin Empire sat in his ceremonial battle armor, his forearms crossed in skepticism. His people had never bowed to anyone, and the idea of following human leadership made his warrior pride burn with anger. The synth representative was a floating crystalline intelligence called Node Prime 7. It calculated the probability of human success at exactly 12.3%, and it was not impressed with those odds. General Korthak of the Raktar Federation kept his massive stone-like hands near his weapons. His people had survived by trusting no one, and he saw this alliance as a dangerous weakness. Elder Zephys sat quietly among them, along with representatives from dozens of smaller species that the Keepers had saved over the centuries. Everyone was here because they had no choice. The Devourers were winning, and their old ways of fighting were not working. "You want us to follow a human?" Commander Thaxal growled. "A member of a species that could not even save their own world." Jake felt the familiar pain of Earth's loss, but he did not let it show on his face. "You are right, Commander. Humans could not save Earth. We were alone and unprepared. But we are not alone anymore." Jake activated the holographic display in the center of the room. It showed the battle that had taken place 3 days ago at the Karak system. "Watch how we saved the Karak colonies," Jake said. The hologram showed 12 devourer ships, approaching a system with 4 inhabited worlds. The planets were protected by a small Raktar defense fleet, but everyone knew the stone-like warriors would not be able to stop so many enemies. Then the combined fleet arrived. Corlin. Battleships dropped out of hyperspace, their weapons charging with blue fire. But instead of attacking immediately, they began moving in patterns that seemed random to an outside observer. Synth vessels followed, their sleek forms dancing between the Corlan ships in perfect coordination. They were not firing weapons either, but their energy fields were creating complex interference patterns in space. Keeper ships moved through the formation like ghosts, invisible to devourer sensors, but vital to the plan. They carried the life information that would make the trap work, and coordinating it all were the 3 human-designed command ships, small vessels that looked weak compared to the massive alien warships around them. Lisa's communication network. "Let every ship think as one mind," Jake explained as they watched the battle unfold. The Corlin pilots could feel what the synth computers were calculating. The synth could understand Raktar defensive instincts. The Keepers could sense where the Devourers would strike before they moved. In the hologram, the Devourer ships approached the seemingly chaotic fleet formation. They began their attack, energy beams lashing out to consume the life force of their enemies. But the beams hit nothing. The combined fleet had moved at exactly the right moment, guided by the shared consciousness of 4 different species working as one. Then the trap closed. The Corlan ships fired their massive weapons, but not at the Devourers. They fired at specific points in space where synth calculations had determined the quantum fields would be weakest. The energy blasts created tears in space-time itself. The synth vessels poured their own energy into these tears, widening them and shaping them into something that had never existed before. Quantum nets that could catch ships that moved through solid matter. The Keeper ships released concentrated bursts of life information, creating areas of space that burned with the essence of 1,000 different species. The Devourers could not move through these zones without taking damage, and the human command ships coordinated it all, making sure every element of the plan happened at exactly the right moment. The Devourer ships found themselves trapped in nets. They could not escape, surrounded by space that was poison to their existence. For the first time in the war, Devourer vessels were destroyed instead of just driven away. 12 Devourer ships destroyed, Jake announced. 0 Allied casualties. 4 worlds saved. The conference hall was silent. Commander Thaxal leaned forward, his warrior instincts recognizing a successful battle plan when he saw one. "How?" he asked. "By doing what humans do best," Jake replied. "We found a way to make everyone's strengths work together." Lisa Carter stepped up to join Jake at the display. Over the past months, she had become the galaxy's leading expert on interspecies cooperation. "Each of your species is already superior to humans in specific ways," she explained. "Corlan warriors are stronger and braver than any human soldier. Synth computers are faster and more logical than human minds. Raktar engineers build better defenses than human architects." "Then why do you think you can lead us?" Node Prime 7 asked with mechanical precision. "Because humans do not try to be better than everyone else at everything," Lisa said. We try to help everyone else be better than they already are. She activated a new display showing the biological research she had been conducting. I have been studying how different species think and work together. Every species has natural tendencies that make them excellent at certain things, but blind to others. The display showed brain scans from different species. Corlin think in terms of personal honor and individual achievement. This makes them incredible warriors, but they struggle with complex group coordination. Commander Thaxal's armor bristled, but he did not disagree. Synth process information perfectly, but they have trouble understanding unpredictable biological behavior. Raktar are masters of defense and group survival, but they are suspicious of innovation and change. General Korthak rumbled with annoyance, but he too remained silent. Humans are not the best at any of these things, Lisa continued. But we are good enough at all of them to understand how they can work together. We see connections that others miss. Jake took over the presentation. In the old way of fighting, each species worked alone. Corland fleets relied on individual ship combat. Synth vessels coordinated only with other synth. Raktar forces focused purely on defense. This approach failed because the Devourers are better than any single species at their own specialties, Lisa added. They are stronger than Corlan, more logical than Synth, better defended than Raktar. But they are not better than all of us working together, Jake concluded. The room erupted in argument. Representatives shouted in dozens of different languages. Some species wanted to know why they should trust humans with their most advanced technology. Others demanded to know what humans would contribute besides leadership. Jake waited for the noise to die down, then he answered the question they were all thinking. You want to know what humans bring to this alliance? We bring the thing that the Devourers cannot understand or counter. We bring the ability to change. He gestured to the displays around the room. Every other species in this room thinks in patterns. Corlin think in terms of honor and combat. Synth think in terms of logic and efficiency. Raktar think in terms of territory and survival. These patterns make you strong, but they also make you predictable. Humans do not think in patterns. We adapt. We improvise. We find new solutions to old problems. That is why we could figure out your technology so quickly. That is why we could see connections between your species that you missed. That is why we can lead a war against an enemy that defeated all of you when you fought alone. Elder Zephys spoke for the first time during the meeting. The humans have already proven their value. They have created technologies that none of us could develop alone. They have won battles that we could not win separately. But can they win the war? Commander Thaxal asked. Jake looked around the room at the representatives of dozens of species. Some were eager to fight. Others were afraid. All of them were desperate. I do not know if we can win, Jake said honestly. But I know that if we do not try together, we will all die separately. The Devourers have already proven they can defeat each of us alone. Our only chance is to become something they have never faced before. What is that? Node Prime 7 asked. A galaxy that fights as one, Jake replied. The vote was close, but it passed. The Galactic Defense Alliance was officially formed, with Jake Morrison as Supreme Commander and Lisa Carter as Chief Science Coordinator. As the representatives filed out to return to their home fleets, Commander Thaxol approached. "Jake, human," the Corlin warrior said, "you have convinced me to follow you into battle. Do not make me regret this choice." "I will do my best, Commander," Jake replied. "Your best had better be enough," Thaxol said, "because if it is not, we are all dead." Jake watched the alien warrior leave and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was now the leader of the largest military force in galactic history. Ships from 100 different worlds would follow his orders into battle against an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. But as he looked out at the stars visible through the station's windows, Jake felt confident. The galaxy had saved humanity when Earth died. Now humanity would lead the galaxy in saving itself. The real war was about to begin. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UGS Unity, the first truly integrated command ship in galactic history. Through the view screen, he could see the largest fleet ever assembled. 5,000 ships from dozens of different species, all working together under the banner of the Galactic Defense Alliance. Today would mark the first coordinated counterattack against the Devourers. "All fleet commanders report ready," announced Captain Rachel Stone, the human tactical officer who had become Jake's right hand in planning military operations. Rachel had been rescued from a damaged exploration vessel just 3 months ago, but her background as a military strategist made her invaluable to their cause. Jake nodded and opened the communication channel that connected him to every ship in the fleet. Thanks to Lisa's quantum communication network, his words would be instantly translated and understood by every species in the Alliance. "This is Supreme Commander Morrison to all Alliance forces," he began. "Today we stop running. Today we stop hiding. Today we take the fight to the Devourers and show them that this galaxy will not go quietly into the dark." The response was immediate. Corlin war cries echoed from their battleships. Synth vessels pulsed with coordinated light displays. Raktar ships rumbled with deep harmonic sounds that meant determination in their culture. Keeper vessels remained silent, but Jake could feel their support through the quantum link. The target was the Darius system, where the Devourers had established what appeared to be a staging area. Intelligence reports suggested that 15 Devourer ships were there, feeding on the life force they had drained from 3 dead worlds. "Begin approach," Jake commanded. The fleet moved through hyperspace in perfect formation. Each species contributed their unique faster-than-light technology to create a combined approach that was faster and more efficient than anything any single species could achieve alone. Jake studied the tactical displays, watching as the fleet prepared to drop back into normal space. This battle would test everything they had learned about fighting the Devourers. "Dropping to sublight in 30 seconds, Rachel announced. Jake felt his heart racing. This was it, the moment that would determine whether their alliance was truly strong enough to fight back against the enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. "All ships, execute Plan Alpha," Jake ordered. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a formation that looked chaotic to outside observers. Ships seemed scattered randomly across the system with no apparent coordination between different species. But Jake knew better. Every ship was exactly where it needed to be. The Devourer ships reacted immediately. 15 black vessels, each the size of a small moon, began moving toward what they perceived as easy targets, their energy-draining weapons charged with deadly. "Red light. Phase 1 complete," Rachel reported. "Devourers are taking the bait." Jake watched as the enemy ships spread out to attack different parts of the Alliance fleet. This was exactly what they wanted. The Devourers fought best when they could focus their power on single targets. By appearing scattered and weak, the Alliance had forced them to divide their forces. "Execute Phase 2, Jake commanded. Suddenly, the seemingly random fleet formation revealed its true purpose. Corlin battleships that had appeared isolated were actually positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Synth vessels that looked out of place were precisely positioned to generate quantum interference patterns. Raktar ships formed defensive clusters that could protect the more vulnerable Keeper vessels, and threading through it all were the human command ships, coordinating everything through Lisa's communication network. The Devourers found themselves facing something they had never encountered before, a fluid battle formation that changed and adapted faster than they could respond. "Devourer ship Alpha 7 is targeting the Corlin cruiser Vengeance," Rachel called out, "initiating countermaneuver Delta 3. Jake watched as the plan unfolded. The Corlin cruiser appeared to be caught off guard, but it was actually part of the trap. As the Devourer ship moved in for what should have been an easy kill, 3 synth vessels emerged from hyperspace behind it. The synth ships did not fire weapons. Instead, they projected concentrated fields of life information, genetic patterns, from hundreds of different species that Lisa had programmed into their computers. The effect on the Devourer ship was immediate and violent. The black vessel twisted in space as if in pain, its energy-draining weapons flickering and failing. "Direct hit," Rachel reported with satisfaction. "Devourer ship Alpha 7 is retreating." Across the battle space, similar scenes played out. Every time a Devourer ship tried to attack, it found itself surrounded by concentrated life force that burned their systems like acid. But the Devourers adapted quickly. After losing 3 ships to the Alliance tactics, the remaining 12 vessels began working together in ways they had never done before. "They are learning," Jake observed grimly. "New formation pattern detected. They are combining their drain fields." On the tactical display, the Devourer ships formed a tight formation that allowed them to share their energy-draining power. Together, they were strong enough to burn through even concentrated life force projections. "They are targeting the Keeper vessel Sanctuary," Rachel warned. "If they destroy that ship, we lose half our life force projectors." Jake made a split-second decision that went against everything military doctrine taught about protecting valuable assets. "All ships converge on the Sanctuary, maximum speed." The Alliance fleet abandoned their carefully planned formation and rushed toward the threatened Keeper ship. To any outside observer, it looked like panic, a desperate attempt to save one vessel that would result in the entire fleet being destroyed. But Jake was counting on the Devourers thinking exactly that. As the Alliance ships converged, they created something unprecedented, a concentration of life force greater than anything that had ever existed in one place. Ships from dozens of species, carrying genetic information from hundreds of worlds, all focusing their life energy in a single point in space. The effect was beyond anything Jake had hoped for. The concentrated life force did not just hurt the devourer ships. It began to change them. The black vessels started to glow with new colors. Their twisted, insect-like shapes began to smooth out and become more elegant. "Incredible!" Lisa's voice came over the communication channel from her research ship. "The life force is not destroying them. It is healing them." Jake stared in amazement as the transformation continued. The devourer ships were changing, becoming something beautiful instead of terrifying. Their energy-draining weapons were transforming into something else entirely. One of the transformed ships opened a communication channel. The voice that came through was unlike anything Jake had ever heard. Alien, but somehow familiar, hostile, but also sad. "What have you done to us?" the voice asked. Jake looked at Rachel, who was just as stunned as he was. This was not part of any plan they had made. "We defended ourselves," Jake replied carefully. "Who are you?" "We are..." The voice paused as if trying to remember something long forgotten. "We were the gardeners. We cultivated life across the galaxy. We helped worlds grow and flourish." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What happened to you?" "The void came," the voice said, filled with ancient pain. "It consumed our worlds, our people, everything we had built. We fled, but it followed. We thought if we consumed life ourselves quickly, we could gain enough power to fight back. But we only became like the thing we feared." Jake looked at the transformed ships on his display. They were beautiful now, elegant vessels that seemed to radiate life instead of consuming it. "The void is still coming," the gardener continued. "It follows behind us, consuming everything we leave behind. Your life force has reminded us who we used to be, but it has not changed what follows us." "What is the void?" Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. "The end of everything," the gardener replied. "It does not just destroy matter and energy. It destroys the very concept of existence. It turns reality itself into nothing." Jake felt the weight of this revelation settling on him. The devourers had not been the real enemy. They had been victims, driven mad by something far worse. "Can we fight it?" he asked. "We do not know," the gardener admitted. "We have run for so long we forgot there might be another way. But your alliance, your cooperation, perhaps together we can find a path we could not see alone." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Humans, keepers, and others, working together. Then he looked at the fleet display, showing thousands of ships from dozens of species united in common purpose. "Then we fight together," he decided. "All of us. Against whatever comes." The gardener ship moved closer to the Unity. "We will share what we know of the void. But know this, human leader, what comes behind us has destroyed entire galaxies. Your alliance is strong, but it may not be strong enough." Jake straightened his shoulders. The galaxy had saved a few humans from extinction. Those humans had helped build an alliance that had just turned enemies into allies. Now they would face the ultimate test. "We will find a way to be strong enough," Jake said with quiet determination. "That is what humans do. We find a way." In the distance, at the very edge of sensor range, something dark was approaching. The real war was about to begin. The emergency session on Haven Station brought together every leader in the known galaxy. Jake Morrison looked around the expanded conference hall at faces filled with fear and determination. The revelation about the Void Wraiths had changed everything. Elder Zephys sat next to Gardner Prime, the leader of the transformed Devourer fleet. The two ancient beings had been sharing knowledge for weeks, trying to understand what they were all facing. "Show them," Jake said quietly. The holographic display activated, showing images that the gardeners had carried with them across the dark space between galaxies. Jake had seen these recordings before, but they still made his blood run cold. The first image showed a beautiful galaxy filled with billions of stars. Worlds covered in green forests and blue oceans orbited around golden suns. Cities of crystal and light stretched across continents where countless species lived in harmony. Then the Void Wraiths arrived. The beings were impossible to describe properly. They looked like tears in reality itself, dark spaces where nothing existed, not even the concept of existence. When they moved through space, they left trails of absolute emptiness behind them. When a Void Wraith touched a planet, the world did not just die. It ceased to have ever existed. The stars forgot that planets had ever orbited around them. The universe rewrote itself to pretend that billions of lives had never been lived. This was the Gardner home galaxy, Gardner Prime explained in its musical voice that still carried echoes of ancient grief. 2 million years ago, it was home to 10,000 species and countless trillions of individual lives. The display showed the progression of destruction. World after world simply vanished, not just from space, but from history itself. The stars began to dim as the Void Wraiths consumed the very energy that made nuclear fusion possible. "We tried to fight," Gardner Prime continued. "We built weapons that could crack moons, shields that could stop supernovas, ships that could travel between dimensions. Nothing worked. The Void Wraiths do not fight. They simply make things not exist." "How did you escape?" Lisa asked. She had been studying the Gardner technology, trying to understand how beings could survive the complete erasure of their reality. "We did not escape," Gardner Prime said sadly. "We fled. There is a difference. We abandoned our galaxy and everything in it. We ran to another galaxy and tried to build new lives, but the Void Wraiths followed us there too." The display showed the Gardeners' second attempt at civilization. They had learned from their first defeat and tried a different approach. Instead of building vast cities and complex societies, they created small, hidden communities spread across thousands of worlds. It had not mattered. The Void Wraiths found them anyway. "That was when we became devourers," Gardner Prime admitted. "We thought that if we consumed life ourselves, quickly and efficiently, we could somehow gain enough power to fight the Void. We thought we could become strong enough to survive what had destroyed our entire species twice. But it did not work. Commander Thaxal observed. No, we only became monsters that destroyed life instead of protecting it. We became like the thing we feared, but weaker. At least the void wraiths end suffering quickly. We prolonged it. Dr. Nathan Cross, the human physicist, leaned forward in his chair. He had been studying void wraith technology with the help of Gardner scientists, and his findings were deeply disturbing. The void wraiths are not just destroying matter and energy, Nathan explained. They are unraveling the quantum foundations of reality itself. They feed on the mathematical principles that make existence possible. Can we fight something like that? General Korthak asked. Nathan looked grim. Traditional weapons are useless. You cannot shoot something that does not exist. Energy shields cannot stop something that erases the concept of energy itself. Then how do we survive? Node Prime 7 calculated frantically. Lisa had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now she spoke up. We use the one thing the void wraiths cannot erase. Life itself. She activated her own display, showing the biological research she had been conducting with help from both Keeper and Gardner scientists. Life is not just matter and energy, Lisa explained. Life is information, complex patterns that create meaning and purpose in the universe. When billions of different species exist and interact and grow together, they create a kind of quantum foundation that makes reality stronger. Explain, Elder Zephys requested. Think of reality like a fabric, Lisa said. The void wraiths create tears in that fabric by erasing things from existence, but life repairs the fabric by creating new connections and relationships between different parts of the universe. She showed them the data from their recent battles against the Devourers. When we concentrated life force from multiple species in one place, we did not just hurt the Devourer ships, we actually strengthened the local space-time around us. We made reality more real. Jake began to understand what Lisa was suggesting. You are saying we can fight the void wraiths by bringing life together instead of scattering it. Not just bringing it together, Lisa corrected. Making it work together. Making it grow and change and adapt. The more diverse and interconnected life becomes, the stronger reality becomes. Gardner Prime seemed to pulse with new light. This explains why your alliance was able to heal us. You created something we had never seen before. Perfect cooperation between different forms of life. But will it be enough? Jake asked. Can we create enough life force to stop beings that have destroyed entire galaxies? Nathan pulled up his calculations. According to my models, we would need to unite every living being in this galaxy, not just intelligent species, but every plant, every animal, every microbe. We would need to create a network of life that spans millions of worlds. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the enormity of what Nathan was suggesting. It is impossible, Commander Thaxal said finally. How can we unite every form of life in the galaxy? Most species have never even met each other. The same way we united the Alliance, Jake said quietly. One connection at a time. Elder Zephys looked thoughtful. The Keepers have genetic samples and cultural records from thousands of species. If we could find a way to share this information, and the gardeners know the locations of millions of worlds we have never contacted, Gardner Prime added, together we could reach species that have never known about the rest of the galaxy. Lisa was already working on her calculations. If we use the quantum communication network as a foundation, we could theoretically connect every living being in the galaxy, not just intelligent species, every form of life that has ever evolved. A galaxy-wide consciousness, Nathan breathed. It would be the largest living entity ever created. But we are running out of time, Gardner Prime warned. The Void Wraiths are perhaps 10 years behind us. They move slowly, but they never stop. And once they arrive in this galaxy, then we have 10 years to unite an entire galaxy, Jake said. 10 years to create something that has never existed before. He looked around the room at the representatives of dozens of species. Can we do it? Commander Thaxel was the first to respond. The Corlin Empire will provide ships and warriors to protect the Unity Builders. The Synth Collective will contribute computational power to manage the quantum networks, Node Prime 7 announced. The Raktar Federation will build the infrastructure needed to support galaxy-wide communication, General Korthak rumbled. The Keepers will share all our knowledge and genetic archives, Elder Zephys promised. And the Gardeners will guide you to every world that still lives, Gardner Prime added. Jake felt a familiar surge of hope. It was the same feeling he had experienced when the Keepers first saved him from certain death in space. The feeling that impossible things could become possible when different beings work together. Then we begin immediately, Jake decided. Project Unity will be our priority. Above all else, we are going to turn this entire galaxy into a single, living entity that can survive anything the universe throws at it. Lisa smiled at him. The galaxy saved a few humans from extinction. Now those humans are going to save the galaxy by helping every form of life work together. Do you think it will work? Elder Zephys asked. Jake looked out through the station's windows at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the dark space between galaxies, entities of pure destruction were moving toward them. But here, in this room, representatives of dozens of species were already working together to build something magnificent. I do not know if it will work, Jake admitted. But I know that if we fail, it will not be because we did not try hard enough. And I know that bringing life together is always better than keeping it apart. The greatest project in galactic history was about to begin. They had 10 years to unite a trillion living beings into a single force that could stand against the ultimate enemy. It sounded impossible. But then everything worthwhile always did. 10 years later, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Sanctum, watching children from a dozen different species play together in the gardens below. Human children ran alongside young Corlin, their laughter mixing with the melodic, sounds that synth offspring made when they were happy. Raktar younglings built elaborate structures in the sand, while Keeper children floated nearby, their silver forms glowing with joy. It was hard to believe that this peaceful scene existed in a galaxy preparing for the greatest battle in cosmic history. The quantum net is complete, Lisa reported, joining Jake at the viewing window. She carried a data pad showing the status of Project Unity, the incredible undertaking that had consumed the last decade of their lives. Jake looked at the display and felt a mixture of pride and amazement. The map showed the entire galaxy connected by streams of quantum light. Every inhabited world, every space station, every ship was part of a vast network that linked all life together. 12 trillion individual worlds, Lisa continued. 400,000 different species. More forms of life than anyone thought existed in the galaxy. All connected through the Unity network. And it is working? Jake asked. Lisa smiled. Better than we ever hoped. The quantum field generated by all that connected life is so strong that space itself has become more stable. We have not lost a single world to natural disasters or cosmic accidents in the last 3 years. It had been the most ambitious project ever attempted. Teams of keepers, gardeners, and alliance members had spent years traveling to every corner of the galaxy, making contact with species that had never known about the greater galactic community. Some species had been afraid, others had been hostile. Many had been confused about why strangers from the stars wanted to help them connect to something larger than themselves. But gradually, world by world, species by species, the network had grown. The breakthrough had come when they realized that most species did not need to understand the science behind the Unity network. They just needed to understand that working together made everyone stronger and safer. Jake remembered the day they connected the first 1,000 worlds. The quantum resonance had been so powerful that everyone connected to the network had briefly felt what it was like to be every other form of life in the galaxy. For just a moment, a human could experience what it felt like to be a tree growing toward sunlight, or a fish swimming in an alien ocean, or a crystal being thinking in mathematical harmonies. The experience had changed everyone. Fear and suspicion between species had begun to disappear when everyone could literally feel what it was like to be someone else. "Supreme Commander," came a voice from behind them. Jake turned to see Captain Rachel Stone approaching with a serious expression on her face. "We are receiving reports from the edge of the galaxy. Long-range sensors have detected them." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "The Void Wraiths?" "Yes, sir. They have arrived." Jake followed Rachel to the command center of New Sanctum. The massive space station had become the coordination point for the entire galaxy's defense. Representatives from every species worked together at control stations that would have been impossible to operate before the Unity network linked their minds. The main display showed the edge of the galaxy, where the first void wraiths were emerging from the dark space between stars. Jake had seen recordings of these beings before, but witnessing them in real time was still terrifying. They looked like tears in reality itself, dark shapes that hurt to look at directly, as if the eye could not quite process something that should not exist. Where they moved, stars began to dim and die. Space itself seemed to become less real. "How many?" Jake asked. "Sensors detect at least 50 void wraiths in the first wave," Rachel reported. "Based on Gardner estimates, there could be thousands more behind them." Elder Zephys materialized next to Jake, his form shimmering with the quantum energy of the Unity network. The galaxy is ready, Jake Morrison. Every living being is connected. Every world is prepared. Jake nodded and opened the communication channel that linked him to every intelligence in the galaxy. When he spoke, his words were heard by human children playing in gardens, by ancient keeper philosophers contemplating existence, by Corlin warriors sharpening their weapons, by synth computers calculating defense patterns, by plants growing in alien soil, by fish swimming in distant seas. "This is Supreme Commander Morrison to all life in the galaxy," he began. "The enemy we have prepared for has arrived. Today we find out if the unity we have built is strong enough to protect everything we love." The response was overwhelming. Not words, but feelings, determination, courage, love, and the absolute refusal to let darkness win. The quantum network carried the combined will of an entire galaxy, trillions upon trillions of individual lives, all committed to the same purpose. "All defense stations report ready," Rachel announced. "The quantum barriers are active around every inhabited system." Jake watched the tactical display as the Void Wraiths approached the first line of defense. These were uninhabited systems that had been converted into quantum fortresses, concentrations of life force so powerful that they created walls of pure existence. The first Void Wraith touched the barrier around the Epsilon system. The effect was immediate and shocking. Instead of the barrier failing, the Void Wraith recoiled as if burned. Where it had touched the quantum field, something impossible happened. The darkness began to change. "Incredible," Nathan Cross reported from his science station. "The concentrated life force is not just blocking the Void Wraith, it is healing it." On the display, the dark tear in reality began to fill with light. The Void Wraith was transforming, becoming something that belonged in the universe instead of something that destroyed it. "All units, maintain defensive positions," Jake ordered. "Let them come to us." More Void Wraiths approached the barriers, and the same thing happened to each one. The concentrated life force of an entire galaxy was too powerful for their destructive nature to overcome. Instead of consuming existence, they were being forced to become part of it. But Jake knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when the main force arrived. "Long-range sensors detect a massive object approaching," Rachel reported. "It is. I am not sure what it is." The display zoomed out to show something that defied comprehension. It looked like a galaxy-sized creature made of pure darkness, with Void Wraiths streaming from it like antibodies from an infection. "That is the Void itself," Gardner Prime announced, materializing on the command deck. "The source of all destruction. The thing that destroyed our galaxy and countless others." Jake felt a chill, but he also felt the support of every living being in the galaxy flowing through the Unity network. He was not facing this alone. "How do we fight something that size?" Rachel asked. "We do not fight it," Jake realized. "We heal it." He turned to Lisa, who was working frantically at her biology station. "Can we extend the Unity network to include the Void itself?" Lisa looked up with wonder in her eyes. "Theoretically, yes,"